Welcome to Freethinker Radio on KPFT Houston. We're finding all kinds of devices in the studio and being puzzled by it. We're live, Derrick.
Yo, what's up? Feels good to be back in the studio. This is Derrick Broze and Micah Jackson. You're listening to Freethinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston. You just heard the People's News.
Exciting, good stuff.
And we are excited to be here, of course, on KPFT, community-supported, corporate-free, commercial-free, listener-supported radio. You can always find more at kpft.org if you want to get involved, support in some way. And, so I was gone last weekend on Monday. Micah, how are you? What was going on?
Oh, we had all kinds of news. How come I can't hear myself? We had all kinds of news. We had guests, and we're glad that you're back, that's for sure. Today, we're going to have Gavin on board discussing his project that he's involved with outside of Austin, which is a documentary, you could say, about the music scene here in Houston. So that should be interesting. We'll be talking to him for about 10 minutes early in the show, and then we're going to go into deeper conversation here. We're going to go into deeper conversation with him on Monday's HD show. So I'm very excited about that. So I think that might be something we start doing a bit more. We do invite all the listeners to listen to the HD show as well, because we have more time to get into the details. So I think with this discussion on outside of Austin, we're going to continue or to at least start spearheading that sort of an idea. So we've noticed that we have been having more listeners on the HD side, so thank you much. And here later in the show, we want to be able to get into your calls at 713-526-5738. We've had a lot of interesting dialogue over here on the FM side, all kinds of points of views about the news that we'll be getting into. And can you give them some ideas about what kind of news we'll be getting into this episode?
Well, I definitely have an update on, one of our favorite topics here on the show that seems to get callers, vaccines, vaccinations, and the kind of measles outbreak spreading, the idea that's spreading around the country. And we'll talk about some laws issued recently in New York, mandatory vaccination orders, which are quite controversial. We'll talk about a court decision in that area. I definitely want to get into, I don't know if you had a chance to cover it last week, but Julian Assange and WikiLeaks.
That is something that I had wished we could have got more into. I did get into the New York, I guess you could call it mandatory vaccination, right? Because that's what it is, punishment if you don't have your children vaccinated, etc. But yeah, I wanted to get more into Julian Assange, but with our guests and being, squeezed into an hour, we only have so much time. So I want to make sure we do cover that in depth this episode.
Cool. Well, we can definitely get into that. Before we do that, is there anything local we should cover? Events you have coming up? I know Johnny, our producer. Johnny, an event going on tonight you want to share?
Yeah. The House of J is having some special guests called Commie Hilfiger, which is kind of a satirical take on a communist pop punk band. It's quite fun. I've heard they're very entertaining. They're singers from New York, so they only play about twice a year.
Are we going to hear them today?
Yes.
Cool.
We're going to be playing them later today. I think their song's called Cuban Missile Crisis.
That should be a lot of fun.
Cool. So that show's going on tonight. Where is that at?
That's at the House of J, 323
And El Jumbotron.
Hutchison.
Oh, so sorry, man. So sorry.
Just cutting me off?
Yeah, we have to say it twice now. Where's that?
It's at the House of J. That's 323 Hutchison Street. It's over in the East End. And, we do gardening, we do house shows, all kinds of
I was just there last
stuff.
night clipping stuff from the garden for my salad.
Without my permission?
You weren't there, so I went there and I clipped.
Did you mention everybody on the lineup? I don't think you mentioned everybody on the lineup.
We also have All Gonna Die, Broke Off, and El Jumbotron will be playing as well.
Nice.
That sounds like a scary show. Communists and people talking about dying.
And people clipping out in the yard that you don't even know who they are. So, yeah, we're expecting a call any moment now from Gavin, and that's going to get into it. We got so much local news, too. Harris County's looking to convert a juvenile lockup into an outpatient facility. High turnover continues at the Harris County DA's office.
There's also a really, I don't know if you saw this quote from Adrian Garcia, the sheriff here. We have had issues before. Art Acevedo, who came from Austin, who had issues there.
Police chief.
Yeah, the police chief. Have you seen what
the Nazis enforced their laws?
Yeah, exactly. He tweeted something. We'll see if this is your caller first before we get into that. But, so lots of stuff to talk about locally.
Sounds like we have
Is that our
caller?
Okay, cool. Go for
Great.
it.
Gavin, are you here?
I'm here.
Awesome, awesome. So glad you can join us today on KPFT here in Houston.
Here,
And I'm interested in talking more about outside of Austin, this project that you're working on. I think we've talked about it once before, briefly on the HD side, but we're going to get into it a little bit today. And then I know that you and another friend, another individual involved in the project, are going to come on to the show on Monday, where we have an HD show here on KPFT. And we're going to get into it in more detail, maybe take some calls, and maybe play some music from some of the acts that are involved in it. But let's kind of just lay out the foundation and let people know what's going on. Start where you want. I mean, either introduce yourself or just talk about the project or whatever we need to know.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, it's called Outside of Austin. We did have a little conversation not too long ago with yourself about it. But to follow up, it's called Outside of Austin. It's a documentary film. It's based in Houston's indie rock scene, and it's funny because a lot of people have mentioned the title, like, well, why is Austin in there? And I think we knew what we were doing with that title, I think, and it's no negativity towards Austin. In fact, a lot of these artists here get the chance to go to Austin and kind of strive in their career a little bit more because of the lack of maybe support here in Houston, and that's kind of the point of the title, that Austin is this huge capital for music, but it would really, we want artists outside of Austin and Houston and other cities to be able to survive in their own city and live in this city and still be successful musicians with the support that they deserve. That's kind of where the title comes from. Myself, I'm the director, and of course we have I have three other producers on the project: Colin and Jimenze, Brian Riley, and James Lino. Right now, kind of where we're at as far as like an update on the project, we recently, just about a week ago or so, we recently launched a Kickstarter campaign to raise funds to complete the film. Now, we're, I'd say, about 40 to 50% completed with the film, and we've gone that far essentially on our own funds. Myself or the producers kind of putting that all in ourselves to get it this far. Because on some level it is a bit of a passion project. We really found that there was a need for this to happen, or we felt there was at least. And so we wanted to make it happen. We put that in ourselves, and of course we want to get to the finish line. So we're asking for those funds to be donated as much as possible. Of course, we have rewards and perks and everything that come along with your donation. But we're asking for as much help as we can from the community now to complete this project and push through to the end and get as much eyes on these artists and producers and the business and the industry itself as possible. So
awesome. Can we talk a little bit about the project? Like, how long do you expect it to be? What are people going to get out of it? Like, as a viewer, as someone who's excited about going to a film or something, why would obviously, let's just say I'm on the edge, and I want to support the music scene and all that. But what's exciting about this project? You see what I'm saying? But what's going to, like, from the viewer's point of view, to tell us a little bit about the project and what we can expect.
Sure, I'd say what to expect as far as the final product. Of course, it's a documentary, so it's a little bit, on some level, it creates its own narrative as we go, because we discover as we go, we learn as we go. But it's going to be a feature film, so that means it should be around the length of about 50 minutes to maybe an hour and 20 minutes.
Well, that's pretty exciting. That's a good amount of time to get into stuff, and at least give a something more than just a narrow scope. I mean, even if the Houston's a big city and there's so much music, even in the indie rock scene, there's so much. But at least with a full length film, you got time where, as a spectator, you feel like you get a little taste of the city. And imagine if you're a young kid or something, and you're watching this, 2 years from now or something. How music just keeps going out there, and art and film. So this is a little snapshot of time and of a culture. So that sounds
Absolutely.
Pretty exciting. Do you know any of the acts that are kind of going to get some focus? I know you don't want to let the whole cat out of the bag yet. Got to leave something for the screen. But can you give us something?
Because in fact in January we actually did a free show to kind of raise awareness about some of the bands before we launched the project. So we have some awesome acts. Just off the top of my head, we in fact have many, but off the top of my head, some of them that were at the free show and some that have kind of been our poster bands are, for example, Velveteen Echo, the Will Workers, the Space Cadets, Lida, Birthday Club, and so many more, to be honest, that just have terrible.
No doubt. That's a lot already. That's a lot of diverse acts already. And was there any process by which you, a method by which you chose these acts?
Well, I think that there was a little bit, one of our producers, James, who's also a musician himself, was really familiar with the industry and the people in it. So we kind of went around to people who either we felt, we kind of hit both sides. We went to some of the really popular people in town that we thought were doing really amazing music, and some of the people who we also thought were doing great stuff but had very little exposure, because I think we wanted to make a point that there is great content there that isn't being shown. So we wanted a fair amount of everyone. I think that the real choice maker was pretty much just who was busy, who was really doing things in Houston and deserved to have the attention that we're trying to give them.
No doubt. And one thing I want to keep reminding our listeners is this is an ongoing project. We've spoken with Gavin before, and we're going to be speaking to him Monday. And I'd like to invite you to either message me or the radio page or bring in music from a few of these acts, maybe a few songs for the show on Monday, so that we can get into this music, maybe spend a few moments talking about the songs themselves as we get deeper into this conversation. And that's one thing I want our listeners to realize, that's kind of the method that we're going to go about. That's what we're doing. That's why since we only have 1 hour here, Drive Time FM Friday, on the other end of the weekend, you can get deeper into the stories on Monday. We'll bring the newest news and get deeper into this stuff. So if you think of something over the weekend, or if you're listening to one of these bands, you want to call in, feel free, and we'll get deeper into this Monday. But please, I do want you to try to bring in a couple or a few songs so that we can actually hear the music and have a conversation about it as well, because that's what the film is about in the end.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah, it is. It really is.
So let's wrap this up, Gavin. And what else do you think that you should get out before we let you go?
Well, I just would love for everyone to go take a look at our Kickstarter campaign called Outside of Austin. It explains a lot in great detail of why we're doing this project and what exactly we're doing, and how we believe it's really important for the Houston city to preserve this art and support it. So please go check that out. There's a lot of great content, a trailer, some beautiful images, and just some great explanations on why this project kind of deserves to happen. So Outside of Austin on Kickstarter, and of course any of our social media is at that same name, and we'd love to hear from you guys.
No doubt. I see here you've got the Facebook page and got a trailer out there, and we're sharing that about. But one last question, then we're going to let you go. What does freedom mean to you, Gavin?
I think, especially in the context of what this is right here, we want to give that to artists to be able to create without having to worry about surviving or unable to survive. We want to be able to have the freedom to be creative people in the city that doesn't restrain them from doing what they love, and giving them the option to just be as creative as possible, and create music that we love to listen to. It's in our benefit, to be honest.
That sounds great, Gavin. Let's keep working together towards that end, and talk to you on the other end of the weekend, brother. You have a great one.
All right, same to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, and you are listening to Freethinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston. We're going to go to a song now and come back with some more Houston news, some national news, some phone calls.
Call me.
And, actually, before we get to Call Me Hilfiger, we're going to play some Town Destroyer.
Town Destroyer. See what's happening?
They're here in Houston, and they actually just played a pretty big show recently at White Oak Music Hall. This song we're going to hear is called Afterthought. So you're listening to Freethinker Radio. We'll be right back.
How you like that? I got him in and out of there in 8 minutes.
devour my soul. The ground devours what you'll never miss. Let the roots take hold. Let the wind carry my soul away. Tell me what remains. Will my memories fade? Tell me what remains. Will your memory fade? The poison was with water in my heart and in my head. If I am to commit, can you not feel your body decay? It's giving up on me. I was born with this cancer. I know it's disaster for me. Swallow my anxiety to the pit of me. What's been so controlling? Does it go without knowing? Haven't you heard of God? I'm so forgetful, but you always remind me that this life's not about me. All good things must come to an end. But my voice resides in you, and only when you decide to let it die will I be released from within.
All right.
Town Destroyer. What's the name of that song?
Town Destroyer. That was called Afterthoughts, and you heard it first, hopefully first, maybe before, I don't know. But you just heard it on Freethinker Radio here.
Hey, if you heard it before and you're listening in, thank you. And
Yeah.
if you just heard it, thank you.
Yeah, and if you hadn't heard it, but now you heard it, and now
Thank
you
you.
heard it, and thank you. This is Freethinker Radio. My name is Derrick Broze. I'm here with Micah Jackson, and we just talked with Gavin of, what was it called again, the title?
Outside of Austin.
Outside of Austin, documentary coming up about the scene here in Houston, different music scene going on, so check that out if you hadn't heard of it. And now we're going to get into some more news and take your calls. Of course, if anything you hear in the next half hour or so piques your interest, you want to speak your mind, you can call in at 713-526-5738.
And I want to just take a moment to thank KPFT for the opportunity for the dialogue, whether we're speaking with Gavin or any of the guests or the call-in people or just having this dialogue about the news, because it's so important. Often you just get the headlines and the news rather than any analysis. And so that's what we want to bring together here at Freethinker Radio, is both the headlines and the analysis, and have you be part of the analysis. So we're super excited about that here. And I see this headline that Derrick's sharing with me.
I got a couple. I'm going to start with one that's a little more familiar, because we're going to talk about some Houston news and, of course, some news that relates whether you're listening in Houston or elsewhere. So in the ongoing kind of battle for Proposition B, which we've been talking about for months now, the fight to implement what the voters of Houston asked for to give the firefighters a raise, been going back and forth between Mayor Turner and the city council and the city and the voters. And ultimately, a couple weeks ago, as we noted, the mayor said that they were going to have to fire a bunch of fire cadets. We talked about this on previous shows and different solutions. Well, just this week, Dwight Boykins, one of the city council members, he tagged the vote on these layoffs, which basically means he delayed it. And it goes on for another week. So it says Mayor Sylvester Turner and the city's fire union will have another week to try to negotiate the implementation of Proposition B without more firefighters receiving pink slips, after council member Dwight Boykins delayed the measure to issue 220 layoffs on Wednesday. So 220 more firefighters supposed to get laid off. And despite meeting twice in the last week, Turner and the fire union remain far apart on how to phase in these raises. Of course, they keep fighting over whether it should happen instantly or over amount of time. And this is one of the issues that the mayor is really getting kind of beat up on all sides here in the city as he prepares to run for re-election this fall. And the firefighters are trying to get their raises without getting, fired.
Wasn't there a mandate from the people on this one?
Yeah, there was a vote from the people to implement this Proposition B. And so, as I said, this will now kind of go into another delay. This article is coming from the Chronicle. You can find this online, and it goes a little bit more into detail about the whole issue if it's new to you or if you hadn't heard. But as I said, basically, the people voted for one thing. The mayor is fighting to implement it. He's argued with city council about it, at one point saying, that he's the CEO of the city. He runs things. He got upset whenever he wasn't referred to by his title, mayor. Dwight Boykins, previously, actually, the same guy here, accused him of acting like a dictator. And, so there's...
Dictator?
No, a dictator, not a tater. Taters are good. Dictators are not good. For future reference, taters good, dictators bad. All right. So, in other Mayor Turner news, Tony Busby, who is running against the mayor as
is that Iron Man?
No, not Iron. That's Tony.
Stark.
Stark. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, confused. He might believe he's Tony. He's Tony Stark or Iron Man. He is a millionaire running for office and pledged to have fund his campaign up to $5 million self-fund. He is suing Mayor Turner and Clear Channel over billboards that he calls a campaign violation. He is, of course, challenging the mayor on Wednesday. He claimed that he says donated billboards for the city's Alert Houston campaign violate campaign finance laws because they feature a photo of the Mayor Turner. The lawsuit filed in the 281st State District Court names Turner and Clear Channel Outdoor Inc., the company that donated the 27 billboards. So Clear Channel, a corporation company, donates like, billboards to the city,
Verizon,
and they feature the mayor's face on it as part of the Alert Houston campaign. And so he's saying this is, quote, blatantly supporting Mayor Turner in the November's mayoral race by, quote, plastering his smiling face across the city while promoting him as a civic-minded, safety-conscious leader.
And a 5G champion.
And yeah, also
I said that.
Other new, well, not only you said that,
Verizon
the
said that.
wireless industry, the CTIA, the Cellular Telephone Internet Association, which is supported by Verizon, Sprint, and other companies who are implementing the 5G rollout, they called him the 5G wireless champion. So he's being supported by
a lot of corporations.
This Clear Channel. And it says the billboards promote Alert Houston, a system that sends alerts to Houston residents during emergency situations. Turner spokeswoman Mary Benton said the Office of Emergency Management chose Turner to be the spokesperson for Alert Houston because the mayor acts as the city's emergency manager during natural disasters and emergencies. She said, quote, it's unfortunate that some would choose to politicize this very important public safety message. However, the administration welcomes the media attention given to the Alert Houston campaign and hopes that it may actually help save lives. So he's like, well, I guess if he's going to sue us and it's going to bring more attention to this campaign, then it's a good thing. We'll see how that goes. Just some more news kind of dealing with the mayor.
Yeah, but that is interesting, and it's not just more news. It's just another example of how, personalities are kind of carried along, and whether this is a legitimate violation of campaign law or not, I don't know. But it is interesting to note the way that people are supported like that. So I think that part of it's interesting. Now, whether I'd vote for the candidate that brings it up or not, what's he talk about? Who knows? Whatever.
Yeah. One other interesting local news story here, and I'd love to hear some opinions from our fellow Houstonians. This is some big local news. Rice University, which is right here in the Houston area, a new report from Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy says that decriminalization of small amounts of cannabis would have several benefits, including lowering the number of people in jails. Well, that makes sense. Stop criminalizing people for having a plant in their possession. That
more money for violent offenders.
Reducing collateral consequences of a criminal record and racial disparities. That makes sense, because if you don't criminalize people for having a plant in their possession, then they don't have to have labels like felon and other things and struggle to get jobs and apartments and things.
Or keep their job if they just got arrested for having some weed that they grew or something.
And saving taxpayer money along the way. Oh, yeah, that makes sense, because if you stop spending taxpayer money on criminalizing people for possessing a plant, then they probably won't have to spend the money.
But would they do that probably only in a free country?
Maybe so, or in a free state. This says the report comes as the Texas legislature is considering several bills addressing cannabis use and possession, which is kind of historic in Texas. Harris County, where we're at here in Houston, of course, is the first place in the state to decriminalize cannabis up to an ounce due to the district attorney. But the city officially still criminalizes cannabis. So say like the mayor or somebody could say, we're no longer going to have HPD enforce cannabis criminalization and save people a lot of money, even if this bill here in the Texas legislature, House Bill 63, didn't pass. That bill would replace jail time with a maximum fine of $250 for individuals possessing up to an ounce of cannabis. So it's like, again, a step in the right direction. People think Texas is like the most backwards place in the United States, but actually, there's, and maybe some people in West Texas and other places of Texas, or maybe even here in Houston, would be against this. But according to this new report from Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy and the co-author Catherine Harris, quote, when you look at full legalization, I think there are a lot of different economic and public health impacts that need to be examined, and it's worthy of an intense debate. Decriminalization, however, is a fairly modest policy proposal that we have seen consistent support in Texas. I like that. Decriminalize it instead of getting the state involved. One benefit is financial.
If someone does a crime, get them for the crime. Like if they go and rob someone and they're high on, what is this called? Weed. If they go rob someone high on weed,
wacky tobacco.
yeah, then you hold them responsible for robbing someone, you know. Don't hold the plant responsible. Don't blame the plant. And I do think you brought up a great point about the money, because it turns out, and this is just recently in the news this month, that the Harris County DA's office estimated that it saved $35 million.
Million.
Yes, that's right. And you want to talk about how to pay people and catch like violent offenders? Well, this sounds like the most progress I've heard about in decades. $35 million saved and arrested 14,000 fewer people since its start of a program to divert
which is just about
marijuana.
2 years ago.
Yep.
March,
and that's
so it's been
just
2
on
years.
marijuana. So that ought to tell you how much money they were wasting arresting people for a plant, and how many people's lives, 14,000 people.
Imagine if they decriminalized psychedelics too in the city, how much money they'd save. I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a crazy idea, but that is interesting. Decriminalization in the last 2 years saving over $30 million. Imagine if the mayor, again...
excuse me, $35 million. I know to some people with lots of money...
Well, mine says more than 30.
Ooh, well, $35 million is more than...
Okay, so we're both right. Yeah. But 35 is a lot different than 30. But 35 million, imagine if the mayor or a mayoral candidate said that, hey, we're going to instruct HPD to stop arresting cannabis users. How much money would that save?
Well, look at it this way. Marijuana arrests are a gateway to police abuse sometimes, because, you know, it gives them one more reason to mess with someone. And what violence is there in someone using marijuana? To themselves, maybe they get a little lung, but they could eat edibles, right?
They could eat edibles.
Other than that,
you know, be careful too.
I mean, you got to hold people responsible for the crime, not the plant. It's not responsible for it. So I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. It sounds like the metrics bear that out, and this new study from Rice kind of just had some conclusion to that. We have a call. Maybe
yeah, I think we got our friend MOD on the line. MOD, you with us?
Hello.
Hey, what's going on, man? What's on your mind?
They got that plant shop or that brownie place that's opening up tomorrow. I think it's hemp. It's what, CBD, yeah, and it can have like a .003, I think, of THC. So it's not the Colorado bakeries, but it's something close to it, I guess.
Yeah, it's small steps here in Houston, but it seems to be happening. What do you think about that idea? I mean, does it make sense to throw people who possess a plant or use it or whatever into a cage and spend taxpayer dollars on that?
No, man. It's more than half the people in the state's prisons throughout this nation are possession, and it's just a business. You know, you're a commodity at that point. I want to give you all a little more information. It's okay, Derrick, on
sure.
This 5G, but there's something else going on with it. If it's okay, if I give you some updated stuff, if you don't mind.
Hit us with it.
Okay, so there's I found out James Clapper was with intelligence, and he's with the
NSA, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
James. Yeah. Exactly. And he's with this federal organization called GeoINT, geonet.org. Look it up, and it turns out that what's going on with the 5G is just the medium, right? So they can do more of what's called smart cities.
Houston is a smart city. They're working on it, at least.
Yeah. Okay. So Clapper, he's military, and they piloted this application, which is called, geospatial tracking. They did it in Afghanistan and Iraq, and basically it monitors all moving objects, humans, cars, trucks, all transit, transport, forms of transport, and human domains, personal patterns. So this agenda, guys, is bigger than we thought initially. There's a bigger intention.
As far as surveillance, you mean? Like just the big, yeah, exactly.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. So there are 17 universities that have degree certificate programs across this country: Penn State, Johns Hopkins, North Carolina, University of South California, Utah, UT. So these crossover programs are to basically it's called GeoNet, and there's a symposium. This is managed out of San Antonio, and it's coming up June 4th. It's a all-week thing. So this is government intelligence that's going on, and they're using the companies like I told you all the other day about this company called Accenture. They used to be Arthur Andersen.
Yeah.
And they were used by this company called RAD Group out of Israel. They own like 18 cyber companies. And they basically took 32,000 contractors and built this thing called Identity Without Borders in China. And so I listened to Joe and
what was this thing
Gordon.
in China called? What was this thing you just said it so quickly? I didn't hear you.
It's Identity Without Borders.
All right.
And it's hard to find because they're not making it overt, but Canada wants it too. And I listened to your guys on Coming to America, and Gordon went to Washington last week, and he was told by this CBP, Border Patrol, it's like a federal thing, that they have within 2 to 4 years the means to have facial recognition and retina, that there will not be the requirement for passports.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is a good time. If your listeners could also, if they don't mind, it's real simple. It's GEOINT.org. And Clapper was in there, and they already piloted this on other countries of Conquer, I guess. And it's more surveillance. It's and that's why Turner might be in a haste to, get this thing rolled out, because it really needs 5G.
Yeah, I agree. Man, we appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much for always dropping so much knowledge. Definitely, you give our listeners and us new things to look up, and I appreciate the references, especially for those of us who are kind of deep in this research, like yourself, obviously.
You're welcome.
I agree, man, that there's whether people are, I won't try to assume motivations of other people, but whether knowingly or unknowingly, the push towards 5G and the Internet of Things is going to bring about a surveillance state. And we interviewed a lawyer from the ACLU who said in his own words that 5G could be a, quote, wolf in sheep's clothing, that whether people realize or not is going to lead to a further loss of privacy. So thanks for the call, brother.
All right, then, if we only get around to it, I can give you the limited hangout info on Assange and others, maybe another time. So
if we get
weekend now.
If we get to Assange today, feel free to call back.
It's on our ambition too, but we have very limited show.
All right, brother.
All right, bye.
All right.
Yeah, we definitely have not given Julian Assange enough time in the last few episodes. So,
do you have a story? You want me to get into it?
We got so many stories.
I can
they're
cover
talking
Assange.
about federal regulators are investigating Facebook, and they might even be holding Mark Zuckerberg responsible for privacy violations. Dude, I did that one in half a minute.
Yeah, I saw some of that. Facebook. Actually, I looked up, and there was like 3 different stories over the weekend about Instagram leaking users' passwords, about Facebook giving companies access to users'
Facebook
emails.
was gone for like a few hours over the weekend. I'm not sure.
Lots of things always going on Facebook, and unfortunately, it's such a big thing, and it affects so much of our world that it whenever something happens with it, it's a piece of news. Well, I want to cover one more Houston-related story that kind of gets us out of Houston as well, and we can move on to bigger things and maybe have time to talk about Assange at least at some point, because it is an important aspect, and we'll make sure to talk about that on Monday. So Houston, how are Houston doctors responding to a record rise in measles? This is coming from Houston Public Media, just talking about different experiences of local doctors and how they're dealing with this. As I said earlier, we've been talking about this ongoing push to combat measles, and I told you I went to an event recently about the event that I went to is called The Danger and the Rise of the Global Anti-Vaccine Movement. One of the speakers was Dr. Hotez, who's a doctor here at Baylor in town. So, there's a lot of people pushing for different ways where doctors in some places, including Texas, are saying they will no longer serve patients who don't vaccinate their children, and doing different things like that to sort of softly coerce people into doing what they want. And, so there's also a bill in Texas that is calling for more transparency towards vaccines, and kind of the opposite, saying that parents shouldn't be able to be forced vaccinated. So it's an obvious discussion that people want to have here in the city, and we're interested in getting your opinions. If you want to call in, 713-526-5738. But I also want to relate this to, as I said, the ongoing push in New York, where there actually already has been a bill passed or I guess I don't know if it was actually a bill or just an order from the mayor, Bill de Blasio, saying that they were initiating a mandatory vaccination order in Williamsburg, in Brooklyn, New York City. They had confined it, I think, down to 4 to 5 different zip codes in Brooklyn that were getting mandatory vaccine orders. And where it's at right now, currently, is they said that they're not planning to force vaccinate people yet, but if you don't do it, you face a $1,000 fine, and
that's
then
not force.
you could continue to face a $1,000 fine. Yeah, and I was talking about this earlier with some friends. Like,
how long does it take for you to have an extra?
At what point do you decide? Like, I mean, obviously, if they're saying it's mandatory, then at some point they will force you. Right now, they're saying,
what happens if you don't pay the $1,000?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, they're saying you'll pay $1,000, and then they'll charge you another $1,000. But at what point will they eventually say, well, we're now going to come take you and put you in jail? So this.
Well, once you go to jail, they're going to say the medical stuff that's irrelevant. It wasn't mandatory.
Yeah, they have you in their possession now, so they own you basically.
Responsible for your well-being.
But
according to infect the other prisoners.
According to a report that just came out yesterday in New York City, so there were first thing there was 5 parents who sued the city over this, and they did so anonymously, I think because they're kind of afraid for their danger, because people who have questions about vaccines get referred to as anti-vaxxers, and some of them can be attacked or lost a job just for having a different opinion. Yeah, exactly, labeled and judged. But so they filed a lawsuit against the city trying to say that this was unfair, unjust, and that they should come up with a better alternative. And within 4 days, the New York State Supreme Court overturned that decision and said, I have to read you this quote, Micah. It's going to really blow your mind. Basically what they said was that, no, we're going to throw out the lawsuit. So they're saying that the parents couldn't sue to stop the forced vaccination order. And here's what the judge's words say. Now, listen to this sort of logic. The judge, Lawrence Nipel, said, a fireman need not obtain the informed consent of the owner before extinguishing a house fire. Vaccination is known to extinguish the fire of contagion. So they're basically saying that if a fireman rushes to your house to save you from a fire and doesn't have to say, hey, can we please put out your fire first, that a doctor trying to save you from a measles outbreak doesn't have to ask you before they stick you with a needle, which to me is just total garbage. I mean, that's just like, I don't know. But the difference as well in that example, using their example, is if you say no to them putting out your house fire, they're not going to fine you or put you in jail for that. It's just like, to me, it's not a good example of the logic. But that's the logic.
Also, there's no record of danger in them putting out house fires.
Yeah, exactly. So it's this kind of different to say I'm going to put out your fire and then I'm going to stick a needle in your arm whether you like it or not. So I heard somebody quote to me recently say, look, I don't have a problem with vaccines. I know other people do. But for me, whether vaccines have been proven 100% safe or not, for somebody to be able to say, I'm going to, vaccinate you whether you like it or not, is a huge violation of self-ownership, of sovereignty, of just individual rights in general. And I think that the kind of bigger argument, Micah, that I think this points to kind of on a deeper level is this is, I would say, a struggle of the sort of collectivist worldview versus the individual kind of supporting individual rights, where one individual says, you don't have the right to force me to take this medicine or this vaccine, and the other person says, you don't have a right not to do that because it's going to hurt the rest of us or potentially hurt the rest of us, right? So there's these two different arguments where one is saying, your individual rights don't matter because you might get the rest of us sick, and the collective good is more important than your individual rights or freedom, right? And so that lawsuit was thrown out by the New York State Supreme Court, and they have basically endorsed this mandatory vaccination order. And the judge says, although they're not considering forced vaccination at the moment, the city claims it will not forcibly vaccinate. Like I said, what else would the point be of now fining people? They've already closed down 4 different schools in the area for basically not having enough vaccinated kids. So think about that. If some kids in some area, the parents are like, no, we're not for that. The city just comes in, shuts down your school, and then
can you sue them for not providing you that school service that you paid?
I mean, I'm sure they would say this is an emergency situation. This is the thing about when governments declare emergency orders, they can do all kinds of crazy things. They turn into dictators again, not the good kind, not the taters, the dictators. And so this is happening in Williamsburg, Brooklyn of New York, 4 different school districts. On April 9th, the health department ordered adults and children aged 6 months and older to get vaccinations within 48 hours. Now they're saying they're up to 3 more parents who've been fined $1,000, and the fines could go up. The cases will go to a hearing where the parents will be fined if the violations are upheld. and some of the parents are apparently not responding to the fines and the orders. And so again, what happens if they don't show up to the court to the summons? Eventually they're going to, I would guess, come arrest them, at least on a warrant for not tending to this thing, right? So eventually you will be taken to jail for not
so
force vaccinating.
So you got to just sell your stuff and move, huh?
I don't know, but it's pretty crazy. So again, what are your thoughts on this, guys? Let's imagine tomorrow Mayor Turner says we have an emergency here in Houston, because this is what Dr. Hotez and some other people are saying, that Houston is the hot spot for anti-vaxxers in Texas.
Some new virus you never heard of, and some new vaccine that, it's just been approved.
Whether they've shown you evidence or not, but they say that there's some new epidemic going around, and we need to forcibly vaccinate you and your kids, and anybody who doesn't do so within 48 hours, this is what they said in the city, will face a $1,000 fine, and then an additional $1,000 fine, and as we said, obviously eventually you will go to jail, you'll be held, or maybe they'll say, okay, we're going to quarantine you for the good of everybody else and lock you up in it won't be a jail or prison, it'll be a quarantine zone for all the anti-vaxxers and their poor children. Or the state says, we're going to take your children from you because you won't follow this obviously important law that everybody knows is for the good of you. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have an idea how you would respond to that situation? What do you think, Micah? What would you do? What do you do?
Well, they probably already took my guns away, right?
At this point, probably, but what about you, Johnny? Let's imagine you're at House J and you and Jeff are chilling, and then you hear this announcement. A text message goes out through the emergency alert system they were talking about earlier, telling you got 48 hours.
Man, I don't know. I don't know what I would do. I wouldn't want to do it. I'd probably see what happens if I don't.
That's the spirit.
I would have to. I don't understand just the idea that anybody could, tell me to do anything medical wise. I should have the right to be as sick as I want.
I do think maybe there's something on the other side about a quarantine, though, right? Because let's think about it, because we do know that there are situations where people have, I'm obviously not for forced vaccine, but how do we deal with these issues? Because no matter how we feel about this issue isn't just going to go away, right?
Yeah, no, it's definitely not going away.
So maybe there needs to be some thoughts to what do we do to quell the fears of those who are ready to basically stick a needle in your arm no matter.
Well, in that court case, basically the lawyer was saying we need to come up with a better, I can't remember his specific language, but he said like a better alternative to this. And the judge said, well, since you haven't presented a better alternative, then there is no better alternative, basically. So I guess, yeah, you would have to say, okay, well, we voluntarily quarantine. You could, if your kids you're suspected, but then I also think that gets dangerous. Anytime, like imagine this, if they get all of the
it's the same as being an outcast
anti-vaxxers
or censored by the society. If the society doesn't want unvaccinated people in it, it's sort of like not wanting people that speak sexist or something.
What do you do?
Right?
Just round up all the quote anti-vaxxers and put them in quarantine?
But we've seen this sort of
okay,
social behavior without the violence. You see what I'm saying here?
Yeah, but where does that go? I mean, I'm worried anytime when they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna have a quarantine for about a week.
It's probably going to be like, well, guess what? You'll lose all your property. You'll get nickels on the dollar.
You're gonna get marked as a non-vaccinated person,
and you're going to go to a fourth world country here in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could get to that, but also, because I know that the measles gestation period is up to 3 weeks, so like you could get. If somebody has it and it's not known, you could still get it up to 3 weeks. So they'd probably be like, we're going to quarantine you for up to a month. But then, you're going to be somewhere where there's obviously going to be razor wire and armed guards because they want to keep people in there in case somebody tries to escape. So it's essentially some sort of temporary prison.
You're going to be in closer quarters where you probably have a greater need for a vaccine than you would like in your house.
I don't know, man. Crazy stuff.
Like those chickens that are all packed in. They need all those antibiotics and stuff because they're in filthy conditions, like a prison would be.
Also, where's the line for when the vaccines? Like, how bad does the disease have to be until they say, all right, this is where it is? You know what I mean? Because the flu kills people, and all those kinds of things. So how long until they're using more and more, minute diseases, or maybe your kid doesn't pay attention in school and now you're forcing the ADHD pills on him, so
I think it
pay better attention because now you're kind of just shifting the
it's a risk return thing
to the government to tell you how to stay healthy. So they could take that and run with it. You know what happens when you give them an inch.
And we have flu season every year, right? So I mean, they could say they're like, well, last year's it was measles. This year it's like the flu vaccine. Most people aren't back because
if we don't keep up with the new flus each year.
Like I had never gotten a flu vaccine, at least since I've been an adult out of my parents' hands. But I know plenty of adults who are like, oh yeah, I haven't got a flu vaccine in 20 years. I never get sick. And maybe that's their opinion. Other people the same thing. But imagine if the state stepped in and said, well, whether or not you've never been sick.
You need one because old people who are getting sick
exactly.
because the flu is mutating
for the
each time.
at-risk population, for the greater good, we have to force
imagine
vaccinate.
that being 1% of the population and 99% of the population being forced to be vaccinated because of the 1% risk. There's so many variables in different scenarios, right? That's why this is a perennial issue until, collectively we come to a little bit better understanding.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, obviously I care about other people's well-being, things of that sort, but I do care about my own freedom, and also where Johnny was kind of going with it as far as like giving someone an inch and how far does the state go.
Do you want to be a kept pet, or do you want to be a free human?
The state isn't really known for taking power and then just giving it back to people.
Ever.
So it's kind of hard to imagine them taking that ability.
Usually it takes a revolution
to start
to get your
forcing
back.
vaccines or medicines on us and then not going to the next step and not going to the next step and not trying to get away with whatever they can.
But luckily we do have this tower of power here, KPFT, the ability to have dialogue and maybe actually shape our living situation. So I do appreciate everybody who's contributed to this, not just this show, but past shows where we've talked about this. I do think this is what's necessary to avoid this sort of draconian worldview in the future,
And speaking of dialogue, we got a caller on the line. Who are we speaking with?
It's your boy Trip.
Oh, what's up, man? How are you doing?
Man, I am kind of furious hearing about all this kind of like concentration camp for vaccine or non-vaxxers,
Oh, I just figured out who it was.
What do you think, man? Give us your thoughts. Lay it on.
He said
We got another caller after you two, so we'll just let this roll. But lay it on your mind, on us. What's on your mind, Trip?
No, I'll be quick, man. I mean, honestly, it's just like we as a society have to reevaluate what we determine as priorities, and I feel like that if the individual didn't have enough say in what they think is right in the community that they belong in. What they're a part of, then it's not necessarily, even the country for the people, by the people anymore. It's like people get to determine what's important. And not the people who are a part of the actual, it's complicated, man. It's not fair. I think it's bullshit.
Do you think that people should be, for, like I was saying about the whole New York thing, let me just pose the same question I gave to Johnny and to the audience. 48 hours, it's announced right now, you got 48 hours to force vaccinate yourself or to face a $1,000 fine and another $1,000 fine. What do you do?
Yeah, I just wait and see what happens. I can't afford that, man. And I can't afford to risk, my health and, exposure, because I've got important things I'm trying to do for the community. And like every time my little brother gets a flu shot, he gets sick. And I haven't been sick for 3 years. I've never had a flu shot. So it just doesn't add up to me.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, man. Thank you for calling in, brother.
I think he's right. People got to step up and have the conversation, if otherwise it's not, representing the people. Thanks so much, Trip. You have a great afternoon.
And we got another caller on the line. Who are we speaking with now?
Are you talking to me? This is Nancy.
Hi.
Derrick, hi.
How are you, Nancy? What's on your mind?
I'm really good. Well, I'm a little upset that that you guys are talking in this vein because really, I think I understand that you're objecting to this sort of, it seems a bit draconian, but people do need to get vaccinated. There is no good scientific evidence that getting vaccinated causes, autism or really any disease. And the analogy with the fire, what you need to think of is, if you had a fire going on and your fire was going to spread to all your neighbors, you would damn well sure want to have the firemen put it out. So that's the problem, is that people that don't get vaccinated then can infect others that maybe can't for some reason or are too young to get vaccinated. So it's really important that people think about the science, think how safe vaccines are and how many millions of lives they save. And I know people have their beliefs that, for whatever principle that they shouldn't get vaccinated, but really it's for the good of everybody. And I hope that you would, take this into consideration. And I actually agree with obligatory vaccination. So that's all I want to say.
Well,
Thanks for having the program.
Could we ask you a question, Nancy?
Sure.
Well, because definitely, we had a couple of things to respond to.
It is a fact that vaccines do work. They do help.
We were never saying otherwise, but we do appreciate know why people have questions. And but the last thing I want to just say to you, because I know you were ready to hang up, and we'll comment on this, is you just said at the end that you support obligatory vaccination. So I just want to be clear that you support legal authorities, health authorities, governmental authorities knocking on someone's door and telling them that they need to give them a vaccine, and if they do not comply, taking them to jail or somewhere.
No, but I do agree that, for example, kids that go to public schools or even private schools, that they should be vaccinated. And, somebody coming and knocking on your door, that's a bit much. But I think that there should be a way that you can, if you're going to be exposed to other people, that people can find out whether or not you've been vaccinated. And if you haven't, and if there's not a medical reason, some people really can't be vaccinated for whatever reason, autoimmune or whatever,
Yes.
but they're very few and far between. So I do think that unless you have one of those rare extenuating circumstances, you should, for example, not be allowed to go to public school if you won't get if you're not vaccinated.
Thank you so much for providing that to the dialogue. It's definitely true that vaccines work. We do need to consider everybody else in the society when we can communicate a disease like this. Thank you so much for joining in the dialogue today on KPFT and supporting Freethinker Radio.
Okay, love the station. So thank you.
Thank you. And I also want to add to that, for our regular listeners, you're also aware that there are concerns regarding the vaccine injury court, we've said before, $4 billion that have been awarded out to families who've been vaccine injured. And although, getting into the vaccine autism, the connection the woman just brought up is a very controversial topic. There are definitely clear examples of children suffering seizures and fevers and things of that sort. So that's why
it may not be the majority, but it is something that you have to.
No.
We've had callers here in Houston.
There's very good evidence that it doesn't cause that. So
we've had callers here in Houston themselves call to share their information, their own stories of that. We've had callers here on the show call in to, for example, just a couple weeks ago, talking about his daughter, getting shot. So we like to share everybody's information. Obviously,
this person said it's not true, but it is true.
It is
that the
absolutely
vaccine
true.
Court has awarded out $4 billion.
Over $4 billion.
Let's just say that they gave more out than they saw probable reason, because sometimes lawsuits could be big, right?
Sure.
That still means they saw some reason to give some out. Why would they give any money out if they were effective?
Yeah, and there's also some of the issues we've covered recently with CDC
or
scientist
didn't have side effects.
Dr. William Thompson, who came out a couple of years ago talking about his studies, and then we talked about a number of examples of CDC employees speaking out in different ways. So the study that is referenced is definitely controversial. But I know we got another caller on the line. Who do we have with us? Who do we have with us now?
This is Jana.
Hey, Jana, what's on your mind?
Am I on the radio now?
Yes, ma'am, you're live.
Oh, how about that? Okay, so I'm old enough to remember when I had the measles back in the 50s, and it was before I started school, so my mother was a homemaker. She was, she didn't have to go to work. So she was home with me and took care of me until I got better, and then that was that. But I guess back then all the adults around had measles, so you didn't have to worry about them. My mother was home with me. These days, how many moms could be home with their kids when they get measles? So, to me, thinking about it, at first I thought, well, what's the big deal that everybody has to get measles vaccination? But really, my overall worldview is that collectively we ought to look toward what has the most social benefit. So I am philosophically in favor of everyone doing the right thing for everybody else. But in this country, we have such suspicion of the government and so many feelings that someone's out to get you. I don't know if this is true in the European countries, for example. Are there so many anti-vaxxers in France and England? Does anyone know? It seems like it's an American thing to be so opposed to doing what's right for society, because we don't have that tradition.
No, we actually have the tradition. You're right. I think it's probably because America has the tradition of individual liberty over collective liberty, which in my view is a very great thing, and that the individual is the minority that's under threat the most often, because in situations like democracy, if 7 out of 10 people vote and say I should be forced vaccinated, the other 3 opinions don't matter, apparently. and I think that's a dangerous situation for me. But I do think generally we should think about, what's good for other people, but I don't believe in coercing that, and especially not through the mechanism of government.
Yeah, because if the argument is so well, why would you need force?
Yeah, good arguments don't need force, I think, and good ideas. But we're just out of time now. We appreciate your call. What was your name again?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. I think we have one more.
She definitely brought up
one quick comment. We have maybe 30 seconds left for our last guest, if we can get to that real quick.
She definitely brought up some good points.
Yeah.
That's kind of the situation. This is why this is such an issue, because you feel this way and you feel that way, and we need to analyze these feelings and work them out and find out what's the best balance to both accommodate individual liberty, but also be able to make sure that if people need vaccines, that they're available, and that they're the education's there to tell them which vaccines work.
Who we got on the line? You got about 30 seconds.
Well, this is Robert.
How you doing, Robert? What's on your mind?
I'm good. I am wondering that, you see, the freedom of the individual to stay sick stops where the freedom of others to stay healthy begins. There's no reason why you should endanger other people, because you refuse the vaccine. And there's been no evidence at all to show that the vaccine is detrimental to people's health. So I like to say that we all have freedoms, but the freedom of the individual to get sick stops where the freedom of people to get healthy begins.
Yeah, and also I think that your desire to be free and that ability stops at my body and where my freedom exists. We believe in freedom of choice and my body, my choice, and we believe that, and this should be applied in all areas because it's a part of the self-ownership concept. If we're not free, then we're not free. But we're going to have to leave it there for today. We appreciate all our callers. We definitely want to encourage everybody to look into what Micah and I are talking about, the vaccine injury corridors, which is why from people we've interviewed, that's one of their big concerns, that they don't hear enough about this discussion, people talking about that. So we're going to have to leave it there until next week. This is Free Thinker Radio.
Have a good one.
Peace.